Okay, a week ago, we were joined by David Kaufman, and the world looked a lot different in the Middle East and Syria. 1 week later, Putin, Obama's running, and the oil's flowing. We'll talk about it today live.
Let's get it started. Let's get it started in here. Let's get it started. Let's get it started in here.
Let's get it started in here.
Welcome to The View from a Pew, a conversation among Christians who are out to grow their faith by asking the simple questions, the tough questions, and the stuff you really wish your pastor would talk about. Come on now, let's reason together. It's your voice we want to hear. The phone lines are open, so join the conversation. Call 855-244-0077. That's 855-244-0077. Now, here's your host, J. Michael McCoy.
4 minutes after the hour on this, the 17th day of September in the Lord's year 2013. I'm J. Michael McCoy, and thanks for joining us on this Tuesday. Tuesday always means Tom Coates, and we talk a little politics. And Tom, I appreciate you being here today, brother.
T is for Tom. That's right. I'm glad to be here with you as usual, Mac. Not always, but usual.
Well, unless you're on one of your many gold-seeking vacations, you're usually here. Consumer credit shirt on and everything on today. Somebody emailed me the other day, and they noticed that I always have either the radio station logo or Hope's logo here, and then on the corner, I don't have corners today, but usually on my sleeves I have Webcast One Live and I have something else. Somebody accused me of being a NASCAR driver the other day, and I said, I don't think NASCAR drivers wear shorts. So, but we do like to, tell folks the name of the radio station or the church or whatever we do. All right, for those of you listening live, thank you very much. We know you have lots of choices you can get to at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Well, I was going to say Oprah, but she's not on anymore. Dr. Oz or Sean Hannity or somebody like that, but you chose to try us, and we appreciate it. We'll try to earn your trust today. I've got great guests. David Kaufman, who's a rabbi here in town, who also does a show called Understanding the World, and that's on Thursdays?
Thursday afternoons, 2 to 3. And
it is David's like one of the smartest guys I've ever met when it comes to Middle East politics. He really is. His wife, he must just drive her crazy with this passion for the Middle East. So we appreciate you being here. How does your wife feel about your passion?
She thinks
for
I'm
politics?
nuts.
Okay, see?
There you go.
All right, I thought so. So 1 week ago, September 11th,
Yeah.
we were, even though as a country, we were trying to memorialize the 12th anniversary, the first anniversary of Benghazi. Yeah. They had all the pomp and circumstances throughout the country, but President Obama had brought us to the brink of war again. And I don't mean to be over dramatic. I think that's true, isn't it?
I don't know if it was war. I think war is overestimating what we were going to do.
Okay.
Yes, I think that's a good observation.
He was going to come on TV that night, right? And he did. And the whole world was waiting. Meanwhile, had Putin made his move yet?
No, because it happened. Well, actually, he probably had before that, but we didn't know about it.
When did we find out about Putin's move?
The next day.
The next day, the Chancellor of Russia or President of Russia?
He's president.
President of Russia.
Czar, I think, is a better term. He didn't give up.
KGB Lord.
He never gave up the power very long, did he?
He pulled what I call a coup.
He had a puppet in there for a while when he had to step down. But yeah.
Fast one is more along
Fast one? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And he was negotiating with Syria to, tell me if I say this right, to basically collect all of their chemical weapons and bring them back to Russia.
Well, they're not going to bring them back to Russia. They're just going to put them under international control.
In Syria.
In Syria.
If that happens.
If it happens. You're overestimating what was going on and what has happened since.
Well, and that's, Quite frankly, my son-in-law asked me on Saturday, do I know what's going on with Syria? And I said, but no, listen to the show on Tuesday because I'll have the rabbi on and he'll catch me up. So I haven't paid a lot of attention to it. By the way, phone lines are open at 1-855-244-0077. That's 855-244-0077. Nationwide, toll free. We'd love to have your voice involved in the comment. So where... let's not get to present yet.
Okay.
Let's talk about what that speech. Does anybody remember the speech?
Yes.
On Tuesday night. What do you think he said, President Obama, in that speech?
I think he made the same case which I said he was making prior to that, which was he's making a case for why we need regime change in Syria while arguing that we should do something else. And that never really made sense to me. The only thing that made sense based on the case that he was making is that Assad shouldn't be running Syria any longer. Then we have a situation in which we find out that the Russians are going to jump in and help try to create a negotiated settlement. And we're sitting here looking at a situation in which nothing makes any sense whatsoever. I mean, we're in a situation in which we say we're going to punish somebody for using chemical weapons functionally, and at the same time, we're not really punishing him at all. It'd be like saying we're going to punish somebody who shoots somebody in the head by taking away their gun. I mean, let's think about what we're really doing. And not only that, but the situation that we're setting up. I mean, see if this sounds familiar. Arab dictator, dictator in the Middle East, uses chemical weapons against his enemies, kills a whole lot of people. We come in and say, you're really bad. We want to take the weapons away under threat. Weapons of mass destruction we're going to have taken away. The dictator says, okay. The Russians say, that sounds like a good idea. We'll support it. And the U.S. wants to take it to the UN and say, if it's violated, we're going to use force. It sounds awfully familiar to a certain other case we had with a certain other Arab nation in the not too distant past. Now this is verbatim Iraq.
I'm not smart enough to understand that. Was that what Saddam Hussein used it against the Kurds?
It is exactly Iraq. I mean, we're looking at a situation in which if Assad were to use chemical weapons again at that point, we'd be literally in the same situation we're in Iraq. In fact, if there were rumors that Assad still had chemical weapons, we'd be in the same situation.
But he still does have them, doesn't he?
No, but I'm just saying after the Russians confirmed that they were taken away and all this stuff, I mean, you'd be in the same boat we were in.
Well, that's true, but now the alliances and the relationships far different since Iran and Iraq were opposed to each other, and Syria is virtually a surrogate state for Iran. So the relationship is far different than what it was at that point.
Yes.
Other than that, you see a lot of similarities.
Well, I mean, what I see is a situation in which we're making a proposal that we really can't enforce. I mean, that the problem with the proposal that we're doing is how would you confirm that Assad got rid of anything? I mean, to a certain extent, even getting rid of a fraction of his stockpile of chemical weapons is a good thing. So even if he eliminated some of them, that's better than nothing as far as a general policy aim. But as far as accomplishing an overall goal,
and that was a problem in Iraq because the UN teams, those that were supposed to verify that he didn't have these weapons, he obscured some of the things. He blocked them. He threw them around. He wouldn't allow full access. Now, after the fact, people speculate that he didn't have as much as he said he did because he wanted to bluster and act the role. He didn't believe that the U.S. would actually move against the very ones they supported during those 8 years of the war with Iran.
Or he knew that the United States knew he didn't have them.
Perhaps.
Which is a whole other.
Yeah, perhaps.
A whole other.
Yeah,
Say that again. He knew.
He may have believed that the United States knew that he didn't have them, so that when he was bluffing, that he could get away with it. But it didn't turn out that way.
But we believed him. Yeah.
David Kaufman, Rabbi, is in the studio today along with Tom Coates, and we're rehashing what's going on in the Middle East. Are you an Obama fan?
Sometimes.
Okay.
I mean, I have to say I'm not a huge fan of any politician, really, and I'm not a big fan of either political party. So,
Well, did you vote for him?
I don't say who I voted for ever.
Would you vote for him next time?
I don't say who I will either.
All right. Well,
You're trying to get me in trouble here. I am a political independent.
well, you
act. I
certainly
don't
would,
talk
you
one way or
certainly
another.
didn't vote for the Mormon.
I'm not saying anything.
No, here, I don't want you to tell me who you voted for.
I can tell
Wink
you
twice if you didn't vote for the Mormon.
I can tell you that I agreed with both of them on different issues. I mean, and that's
Right.
I mean, I'm in a position where I don't agree with Democrats or Republicans on a significant portion of either of their agendas.
All right.
Okay, I think that's a fair statement. Would you say that from
I'm
the point
literally a
of the
political center.
election to now, you are more disappointed with Obama than you had been? And of course,
Of the
your
recent
expertise
election,
is
I mean,
the Middle East.
look, I mean,
but-
I think just on this handling of Syria alone, it's bad. I think the handling of Egypt alone is bad. I really think that President Obama is not particularly focused on foreign policy. I think he wants to be focused on domestic policy. He really wants to deal with implementation of the healthcare plan. He wants to deal with various domestic issues, and he's been trying to pass off the foreign policy stuff, or at least to try to let it go as much as possible. He also has wanted to redirect to Asia because he thinks that Asia is really more important in the long term for the United States. We haven't been able to shift the focus at all because of what's gone on in Egypt and Syria. And they're just huge messes.
All right, well, the people he
by
wants to
ignoring what's
delegate
going on.
to, the John Kerrys and the Secretary of Defense,
And where's
Hagel,
Kerry's
and some
focus?
of these, is your estimation as low as mine is on some of their abilities?
Well, I mean, look, as far as abilities, I don't know. I don't even care to speak about ability. Okay, I mean, what I care about is whether or not I think they made the right decision in different places. What I see right now is that John Kerry's primary focus is on, or has been on, peace between Israelis and Palestinians. We have no idea how that's progressing because they're negotiations being held in private, and Kerry has not seemed to be particularly involved in what's going on in Egypt, which I think is largely out of U.S. control at the moment. I think they've almost just let it go. And then in Syria, he hasn't really been able to work with the Syrians at all, obviously. So he's, I'm sure, been trying to reassure the Jordanians that we're going to help with whatever needs to happen there. And then working with Russia, probably for some time now, in how to deal with Syria. My belief is that he believed that the Russians just weren't going to do anything, and that they were going to stay back, and I think the Russians had planned on that. I mean, as I look at this situation, I don't believe Russia had any intention of engaging in Syria at all.
Until the opening presented itself.
And I'm not even sure it was just the opening. I think it was real fear that the United States was going to use military force to engage in Syria. And Russia decided that, one, they couldn't have an ally under the protectorate of Russia being attacked by the
talked about
United
that
States.
last
We
week,
talked
yeah.
about that last week. And two, I think they really feared what the impact would be. That they had no idea whether they would lose Syria. And so they felt like they had to engage. There are discussions that there were talks between Kerry and Russian leaders about dealing with the chemical weapons before. That would make sense because, as I mentioned last week also, it was in Russia's interest to deal with those chemical weapons as well as the U.S. interest. And the Russians don't want those weapons getting into the hands of al-Qaeda and the Muslim Brotherhood any more than the U.S. would. So it's almost certain that they had discussions of how to handle those chemical weapons long ago, not just recently. What's recent is the idea that came out of nowhere that this is somehow a handling of the use of chemical weapons by Assad, which it obviously was not the case.
All right, we're going to come back with Rabbi Kaufman and Tom Coates as we continue to discuss the Middle East A week after 9/11. It was 1 week ago today that everybody was ready to go to war. Everybody was ready to bomb Syria. Everybody was ready to go to nose to nose and tail to tail with Putin in Russia. What is it 7 short days later? We'll talk about that next, live on KTIA, Iowa.
If you choose to obey the power of sin, it leads to death. If you choose to obey obedience, it leads to righteousness.
Forgiveness is just the beginning of life in Christ. God wants us to live for Him now.
And because of Jesus Christ, the gospel was preached, and you and I are blessed today because of Abraham. Did you know that? We're blessed.
Experience Truth, 99.3 FM.
Yes, now your favorite programs on Webcast One Live can all be watched and listened to on any Android or Apple device. Your phone, tablet, or iPad. Yes, your favorite shows on Webcast One Live are available live or on podcast wherever you go. Let me introduce to you some of our great shows.
Shalom. Every week on Understanding the World with Rabbi David Kaufman, we'll talk about issues in the Middle East, issues related to the Jewish tradition and religious traditions in general, and keep you up to date on exactly what's going on around the world. You may know some of the story, but you haven't heard all of the story until you've heard it on Understanding the World with Rabbi David Kaufman and our special guests we have on every week.
Hi, I'm Doc. You listen to me every Tuesday from 6 to 7 p.m. on Doc and Lefty radio podcast program, where we discuss all the relevant topics of the day, including state, local, and national politics. My partner in crime, Lefty, often likes to have a little bit of conservative justice served upon him, so please turn in for the fireworks every week from 6 to 7 p.m. on Tuesdays at webcastonelive.com. Thank you.
So when you want to watch your favorite Webcast One program, remember, there's an app for that. You know, there's an app for that.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Get away from us, you mean old credit card. We don't have any more money. We're in trouble now. Save us! Help! Somebody save us! Somebody help! Help! Save us!
Hi, I'm Tom Coates from Consumer Credit of Des Moines. If your credit card's a little too animated, give us a call.
Hooray! We're saved! Consumer Credit! You're our hero!
We've got questions. You've got the answer. Join the conversation. It's your voice we want to hear. So call 855-244-0077. Now, here's J. Michael McCoy.
21 minutes after the hour on the 17th day of September in the Lord's year 2013. People ask me a lot of times, and most of the time they're broadcasters, why do you give the date? That means if you ever want to replay this show, if this show would somehow become a best of, which I think every show we do is a best of. And I'm really serious about that. I think after 30-some years in this business, I don't think we have bad shows. We have great shows, but I don't think we have bad shows. And so people say, why do you timestamp it? And I said, because we're talking about today. What we talked about yesterday. Think about what we talked about 1 week ago today. How different the world is 1 week later. And so, and mainly it's my radio guys that, say that. But I say that not because I don't think you know what date it is. I say it because sometime down in history, somebody's going to go listen to this show for whatever reason, and there's going to be no doubt about when it was recorded. So it's the 17th day of September in the Lord's year 2013. I'm J. Michael McCoy. My guest today is Rabbi David Kaufman. And he is just the smartest guy I know on the Middle East. Did I have you on 98.3?
Yeah, at one
I
point.
did. Okay, so that I think I met you through Finkelstein, right?
Yeah.
And now you never bring Mark.
Or for Michael Libby maybe too.
Could have been. Probably through Finkelstein. I think he probably brought you on one time when we were talking about stuff. And of course, Tom Coates. It's some people it's Taco Tuesday. Here it's Tommy Tuesday, where Tom Coates comes. You could bring tacos.
Well, and last time we had
Taco Tommy Tuesdays.
Remember, Michael Libby got pretty frustrated last time we had him on here on politics.
Yeah, I've asked him to come, and Michael Libby and I are friends and we do little projects together, but I sent him a Facebook message the other day to come back on the show sometime. Fell on dead ears. I didn't hear anything back. So I'm going to have to work. I'll probably have to bring him on when you're not here.
When I'm not here, okay.
You really pushed him hard that day.
Oh,
You did. All right. So we're in the middle of this conversation, and all of a sudden now we've got, isn't this just the worst scenario that Israel and America could imagine, with Egypt now fallen? Is that fair to say, to the Muslim Brotherhood?
Oh, no. You got to remember the military is opposed to the Muslim Brotherhood. The military, Israel would prefer the military to the Muslim Brotherhood for
Amen,
sure.
yes.
And to be honest, most of our allies don't understand why we wouldn't.
Amen to that.
So the Muslim Brotherhood has been a long-term ally a long-term enemy of everything we stand for.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this is not a government, not a group that really allies with any of our beliefs.
So they're really a third party. You've got the Russians and their allies. You've got us and our allies, and you've got the Muslim Brotherhood.
You've got multiple different conflicts going on. I mean, Mac, you were talking about the time, date, stamp, and the people would see this. If you looked back on what the theme was 1,000 years ago in the Middle East, you would have had a Sunni-Shia conflict. Guess what's going on in Syria is a Sunni-Shia conflict.
Yeah.
Well, that's true. But, we
so
talked last week, and why is the Obama administration backing the Muslim Brotherhood, the radicals that took over Libya, the Al Qaeda that seems to be behind the rebels in Syria? What do you speculate are their motives?
Well, I can tell you what the motive was in 2009. I mean, I spoke about it in 2009. I mean, we're going back to the fact that they believe that what was going on as American policy in the region was causing the problems that we were running into, and that the U.S. backing dictators who were oppressing their people was fomenting rebellion and anger against the United States. So the United States support for Mubarak in Egypt was getting the opposition, the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt, to hate the United States. Our backing of dictators throughout the Arab world was getting them to hate the United States no matter where we were. And that was the belief. And so the Obama administration came in and said, we're going to change that dynamic. We're going to try to promote democracy in the region. We're going to make these people really like us. And to try to reset that whole thing. The problem is, and David Saperstein of the Religious Action Center spoke at my congregation last night. David is definitely the left of me on a lot of the issues, but he brought up something.
Fair to say he voted for Obama.
Yes, he spoke at the inauguration, actually.
Okay,
but he pointed out the fact that we need to question whether or not if the military had let the Muslim Brotherhood stay in power until they decided to skip the next election instead of ousting them before the next election, then the dynamic might have been different in Egypt. Look, in Egypt we have a nationalist versus Islamist conflict. The average person, your secular democratic activists are really not there. You have people who are in favor of nationalist power, the people who used to support Mubarak, who are now supporting the military, and you've got Islamists who are supporting the Muslim Brotherhood. You've got in Syria 2 different conflicts going on. You've got a Sunni-Shia conflict, so the Sunnis being the Muslim Brotherhood and Al Qaeda rebels, along with some other Muslims there who really are not able to take control of the rebellion. And then you've got the Assad government, which is Shia, but you've also got this nationalist Islamist conflict going on. So the Assad government is a nationalist government. The opposition is Islamist. And these conflicts are in almost every country in the Middle East. You can look at any country and see it. Even in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, on the Palestinian side, you've got two different groups. One of them is Hamas, which is an Islamist group that's connected to the Muslim Brotherhood. And the Palestinian Authority is Fatah, which is a nationalist government that was connected to Mubarak, the kind of, that at least saw as an ally, Mubarak in Egypt and King Hussein in Jordan and them. So you can go country by country and see these conflicts.
All right, so if you're an advisor to Obama today, David, he calls you up on the phone and he says, Rabbi Kaufman.
We don't know if he would because he won't tell us who he voted for.
Well, but he says, I understand you're the man that, I lost my 26-year-old giving us all the good advice that we had in there for Syria. You're next up on my list. Tell me what I should do.
Well, look, what I think he should do is what I think the United States needs to do. I think the United States needs to maximize the position it's in right now, which is get the best deal we can as far as dealing with chemical weapons. I think the opportunities for doing something better than that are now past. The immediate action would have made some sense as far as other policy objectives, making the United States look like it keeps red lines, making the United States look like it's going to exert force to establish its policies. The fact, it doesn't matter. For those things, it doesn't matter how this falls out, because we're not going to look like anything more than a paper tiger, no matter what happens here. We're dealing with a diplomatic solution that, yes, will be to our advantage, but it would have been to our advantage last year, much less last week.
All right. Thank you for that, Rabbi Kaufman. Do you think I should continue, as I've now just started to do, additionally arm the rebels? Do you think that's a good strategy?
I don't know who you would arm.
But that's what I'm doing. I'm arming the rebels. Now, is this a good policy?
The answer to that right now is, if you could figure out some way. Well, it depends on what your policy is. If your policy is to keep the civil war going and weaken both sides, then the answer is you arm the rebels so long as they can fight but not win. Now, you want to talk about the morals and ethics of that policy, we can look at Iran-Iraq war,
right.
we can look at any number of others.
But I would really like to get rid of Assad. Do you think that's a good idea?
Then it depends on whether or not you can install the people you want. And if the answer to that, if the answer to that question is no, then the answer is probably not. If the answer to that is we can get somebody
you know than those that you don't know, is that what you're telling me?
No, I think we know the devil on both sides. I think we've got a devil we know and a devil we know. I mean, we know on the Muslim Brotherhood Al Qaeda side that whoever comes in out of that is not going to be good. The only way you do that kind of policy is if you know who's going to take over. If you can get the Free Syrian Army. If you knew that the Free Syrian Army was going to be able to take control of the country after the fall of Assad, then it would make sense to do something with the Free Syrian Army. If you have no clue who's going to take over, and in fact, you not only, I mean, I'm not even sure we don't have a clue. I think the answer is we know who it would be, and it would be somebody we don't like. And so the reality is our policy right now, until we can make sure that we can guarantee that this goes in a direction we like, is to make sure that Assad doesn't simply wipe out the enemy, because we want Assad to be weak. And you don't want Al-Qaeda and the Muslim Brotherhood. I mean, Al-Qaeda is a really bigger problem than Muslim Brotherhood, because the Muslim Brotherhood already proved in Egypt that they were weak rulers. I mean, so if you could keep the chemical weapons away from the Muslim Brotherhood, we would much prefer a Muslim Brotherhood government there, to be honest. Because
they're not vying for it, are they?
Well, the Muslim Brotherhood and Al-Qaeda are the two main rebel groups right now. They are a large percentage of the rebels. Depends on who you talk to as to how big a percentage of the rebels they are. But it ranges from 50% to about 90%. It's not ranging from 5% to 50%.
All right, but I've heard some talk that the Christian communities are further endangered if Al-Qaeda or the Muslim Brotherhood take over.
Absolutely,
versus Assad.
they are. I mean, see, here, the other problem we run into in Syria is, look, the Christians know that Assad is going to protect them. Now, Assad is protecting them like the father who beats them and beats off anybody who wants to talk to them, beats them away. Okay? He's not a nice person to anybody. Okay? Let's think about it. This guy's a brutal, oppressive dictator. Now, if the Christians in Syria could live in the United States and have a U.S. constitutional democracy, they would vastly choose that over Assad. So let's talk about what the opportunities are here. They're looking at a brutal, oppressive dictator or somebody who has a track record of killing Christians. I mean, that's their choice. Let's not pretend that Assad is the Messiah of the Christians here.
Yeah.
Okay, so, I mean, you're looking at, and you could potentially end up looking at a situation that's very similar to what's going on in Egypt, where the Muslim Brotherhood has just gone through Egypt and attacked Christian communities all over the place. And the nationalist government says, we don't care about Christian communities. I mean, if you're in Egypt, you got a choice of a government that hasn't shown much care and the opposition who's wanted to kill them.
Yeah, whose objective is to wipe them out, yeah.
I mean, although today the Egyptian government actually did invade a city to defend the Copts against the Muslim Brotherhood, but I'm not so sure they didn't do that for strategic reasons.
Okay. All right.
Rather so they can take over the city.
Or because it was a strategically important town rather than because it was helping the Christians.
Okay.
I mean, the Christian communities in these places are all really endangered, but we've got to really think through a policy where we're going to say the Iranian oppressive, puppet government in Syria is better for the Christians than the oppressive Muslim government that would come in. That's not a good situation at all. We need to come up with option 3. I mean, that's the reality here. We cannot leave that as the two options. I mean, you're going to have if you have ongoing war for the next 20 years, 30 years in Syria between the Sunnis and the Shia, you're going to have a lot of dead Christians no matter what happens because they're going to be fighting nonstop. That's not a good scenario either. There's no way that the Muslim Brotherhood and Al-Qaeda rebels are going to stop attacking Christian communities just because we decided not to support Assad.
Okay. One of the things I love about David is I think he unpacks it and we can understand it. If you've got questions, phone lines are open, 1-855-244-0077. When we come back, I want David's perception of how the media is handling this. And not only the legitimate 4 or 5 big networks, but what about the social media and how they're impacting this conflict in the Middle East when we come back.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
I'm Brian Leach, owner and general manager of Service Legends. I brought along a couple of the home comfort heroes.
Hi, I'm Tammy Wells.
I am Nick Wondershide.
I am administrative manager.
I am the senior technician
from Service Legends.
It seems like every good thing, when you feel it to the bone that it's good, there's a lot of hard work put behind it. I don't think that you can fake it and have it turn out good.
You know, if we seem like, okay, that's just weird, it's just a furnace, why would you believe so deeply in a furnace? It's not just that, you know, we want to show the world that you can have good service.
Yeah, I mean, it's your home.
You know, it's built into our daily trainings, it's built into our culture, that we're gonna do whatever it takes to have each client say they love us, period.
That's why we spend all the hours in the training that we do. And if we guarantee it's gonna be a good experience for you, or else it's free, what type of work do you think we're gonna do?
There is a guarantee.
Temperature selection guarantee, fixed right or it's free guarantee, comfort guarantee, best value guarantee. All of these guarantees hold us accountable to ensuring that we exceed your expectations. And if for whatever reason we'd fail and we can't make it right, we guarantee all of those guarantees with a 100% money back guarantee.
I mean, if you don't think that your technician can fix it right, are you gonna say that to a client? No.
You don't have to worry about having a technician come to your house.
We drug test, background check all of our team members. We put safe people in your home. Each and every one of our service techs, 400 hours a year in training.
You tell it the minute they walk in the door. They know what they're doing, they've done their homework, and they actually truly care about what you want.
Because at the end of the day, you're the person that makes sure I have a job.
They're gonna be listening. They're gonna wanna know what your challenges are. Then they're gonna come and give you options, and you get to choose.
If I'm there to help and I make it easy and painless, I did my job right that day.
Well, when it comes to your comfort, safety, and your family, you know, you don't necessarily go buy the most expensive, but you get the most bang for your buck.
Oh, it's worth it, because there's a lot of people that will find a way to get it to work right now and then leave and then come back, charge you again, and the cycle just repeats itself. So when I'm out there looking at the furnace, I want to find why it failed today. How can we change the part today with something that you're not going to have to worry about? Is it worth changing the part today? I mean, you can put a lot of money into a furnace. I can fix parts all day. There's good job security in that for me, but is it the right thing for you?
I get a lot of the phone calls of after the technicians are there. They're just in awe. They're like, wow, you guys are great. I mean, I don't even know what to say. You guys are great. Everything you did was perfect. It was great.
Keep going though, I like this.
Just give us a try. I'm gonna take all the risk.
I've got the time to make this right. I've got the support to make it right.
Just check us out.
And if you don't see the value in what we do,
I mean, fixed right or it's free or 100% money back.
enough said.
We're the ones in the pew, not pulpit. Come on now, let's reason together. The phone lines are open, so call 855-244-0077. Now, here's J. Michael McCoy.
All right, 22 before the top, Salem Radio Network news, and then Pastor Michael Mudloff with True Blue. Rabbi David Kaufman in the house today, along with Tom Coates. Now, the conversation you two were just having before the mics came on was very interesting, and I only caught parts of it. So can you repeat that before we get to the media part?
There's a story coming out today that I picked up on, and I asked David about. It says that that Israel, in a bit of a shift, is moving actively for the ouster of Assad, and I asked him why that was, and he didn't deny that was the case, but his answer was pretty interesting. You want to answer that for the audience again, David?
Look, I think it's fairly strongly the case that Israel believes that its primary enemy is Iran, and having an Iranian proxy regime in Syria is bad for the Israelis. They know that. It's also bad for any number of other regimes in the region. Many of the others are not happy with a Muslim Brotherhood regime in power either. They're not so much worried about Al-Qaeda because they believe that Al-Qaeda would end up getting ousted out of there also, because they're all foreign fighters anyway. They're not actually
Syrian natives.
Natives, but the bigger issue for them, I think, is that they really do want to see the Egyptian model put in place, which is you oust. If you can't get rid of Assad without turning it over to the Muslim Brotherhood, then your option is to try to figure out how to get the Muslim Brotherhood in power as weak as possible. And the way to do that is to have Syria give up its chemical weapons. You have the Muslim Brotherhood take over, which has proven largely incompetent in every place that they've been. And then you expect to have a revolution in fairly short order of secular military people, and you end up with a new coup running, a new military government running Syria, just like you have in Egypt.
One that may not be hooked and beholden to Iran the way that Assad
One that almost certainly wouldn't be beholden to Iran.
That's very interesting, Mac. Did you get all that?
No.
Okay.
So Israel would like Assad to go.
Yeah.
Because no matter who is put in his place is probably not going to align themselves
with
as
Iran.
closely with Iran.
Yeah.
Okay. I got that.
Got that. And he's saying that the Muslim Brotherhood or Al-Qaeda, either one, will not stay long any more than they did in Egypt.
Well, Al-Qaeda wouldn't be there at all. Al-Qaeda wouldn't be the group that takes that ends up
It'd be
running.
the Brotherhood.
If it was Al-Qaeda, Israel wouldn't want that. So, I mean, the Israelis, I think, are fairly sure that it'd be Muslim Brotherhood, some sort of Muslim Brotherhood allied government that would be fairly weak. They wouldn't want anybody in power there with loose chemical weapons. So as long as the United States and Russia are going to take care of the chemical weapons, which
I
is
assume they get some of them. I'm kind of like you. I don't think they get them all.
I mean,
I want to
strategically, this is a mess.
I want to put this conversation on pause just for a second.
Okay.
Where did these chemical weapons come from?
Well, Assad has had a chemical weapons program evidently since the 70s.
When you say a program, you mean manufacturing?
Manufacturing.
Oh, okay.
And he's been manufacturing more since. Now, is there a possibility that some of them came from Iraq? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a possibility that some of them came from other allies, including Iran? Yes.
Somebody said on a news story yesterday, they said that the rocket that carried the canister of gas was Russian-made.
It may well have been. I mean, the Russians have been selling arms and providing arms to Syria for a long period of time, and we know that the North Koreans have. Some of these governments may well have sold Russian-made things to the Syrians too. It's not all direct.
Well, why don't the Russians sell some nukes to them?
Well,
I'm serious.
The Russians can do. The Russians can do all kinds of things. You got to remember, there's also the possibility of the government actually falling from within. And if the government falls from within, then you've put nuclear weapons in the hands of people you don't want to have nuclear weapons. Is it a possibility that the Russians will try to station weapons there? Yes. I mean, I think what their goal is right now is to threaten to station the S-300 missile system in Syria and to threaten to station it in Iran in the hopes that the United States and Israel are afraid enough of the S-300 missile system that they won't do anything with it.
What S-300?
The S-300 anti-aircraft missile system is designed to shoot down airplanes, and it is evidently extremely effective. The belief is that it will defeat the stealth capabilities of Western aircraft. And if that's the case...
What about missiles? Does it have any capabilities to shoot down missiles?
I think it does. I think it does to a certain half. But it's also got an extremely long range. It can shoot down aircraft at long range. So, I mean, it also make it virtually impossible for there to be any commercial aircraft flying anywhere near those countries.
Would that be an act of war in your mind?
Stationing the S-300?
Because you'd also have to put the technical know-how. You'd have to train somebody or have your own people there to run it.
Well,
wouldn't that be an act of
I think for the Israelis it is, and they've made that threat. I think the Israelis have already threatened to take it out if the Russians try to send it.
Okay.
Because they cannot afford to allow it to be set up there.
Mm-hmm.
The S-300 could take down aircraft at Ben Gurion Airport outside Tel Aviv.
Wow.
So it's a very problematic system. The Russians threatened to sell 5 of them to Iran. That would mean that virtually all air traffic in the northern part of the Gulf could be taken out by Iranian anti-aircraft missiles. I mean, you're talking about things that would really dramatically change the course of events. Now the question becomes, what happens if the United States can actually defeat those? I mean, you want to talk about shift of power in 2 different ways. Let's say the Russians actually do install these things and we get around them. If that happens, the power vacuum from the Russian weakness would be so great that it would actually cause all kinds of problems. I mean, so it's actually a risk for the Russians too to try to install these things and then run the risk of having them defeated.
Find out they're not as invincible as they'd like to believe they are.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So this is another one of those cases where the bluff may be more important than actually doing it. They may be discouraged from actually doing it for a lot of different reasons.
All right. So the media, have they been fair on this whole thing?
No.
Okay, how?
Well, I don't think the media has even been talking about any of the issues. I mean, I really think that the media's primary focus in dealing with Syria has been on making it look like Iraq, and then saying we don't want to get into another Iraq war, which basically had nothing to do with what the president was even proposing. Then you had people who were writing articles about why we shouldn't do anything because of various negative possibilities without dealing with the negative possibilities if we do nothing. I mean, a lot of the damage has already been done by the fact that the president even delayed going to Congress. That was the most damaging thing he could have done, because by going to Congress, he opened up the question of what is he going to do? Is the president ever going to be able to do anything without going to Congress again? I mean,
was
think
that an
about
incompetent move in your judgment?
I think it was. I mean, if I had to say there's a single thing that this administration did that was most damaging, it was taking this to Congress.
But it seemed that he was ready to go, that missiles were going to fly on a Friday.
Yeah.
And he took a walk in the Rose Garden with who?
I don't know.
Okay.
But see, I mean, the thing for me, Mac, is even if he had decided at that point that diplomacy was the wiser option, it would have made sense to say that rather than going to Congress. Even if he had just said, I'm going to wait. I've decided to wait another week. I want to send John Kerry to Moscow to see what's going on, to see if we can get this through. That would have made sense. What happened is they completely miscalculated the Congress. They were sure that they would go to Congress. The Congress would say, of course, President, you perceive a serious danger to national security. We're on board. And what happened was the average person questioned the position of the President of the United States to perceive something as a serious threat to our national security. I can't even begin to tell you how damaging that is. I mean, so that reaction of the U.S. public, just in general, and taking this to Congress to begin with, were both very, very bad for our national security.
All right, we're going to take our last break. When we come back, let's try to look in our crystal ball. Let's see what's down the road. Is it just going to be people and politics, or is there going to end up being confrontation between America and Syria and eventually Russia? We'll finish this up next.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Drink, dance, party. Kitty's is the ultimate dance club in Des Moines. A huge dance floor with room to move, 3 bars to keep your drinks full, and kickin' DJs playing all your favorite dance music. At Kitty's, we've always got your birthday party planned with Birthday Fridays. That's right, when your birthday rolls around, there's only one place to go. Gather up your friends and head to Kitty's, where you drink free on the Friday of your birthday week. Find out more about Birthday Fridays at kittysusa.com. Kitty's, all kinds of people, all kinds of music, all kinds of fun.
Drug and alcohol addiction slowly steals a person's identity, tearing away pieces of their life little by little until one day it seems like the hope of a happy future is gone and there's no chance of getting it back. Here at St. Gregory Retreat Centers, we can assure you that there is hope. Our unique approach to recovery begins with the understanding that the dysfunction and damage caused by addiction can be overcome, not just dealt with. Don't let another day go by. Call St. Gregory today.
If you choose to obey the power of sin, it leads to death. If you choose to obey obedience, it leads to righteousness.
Forgiveness is just the beginning of life in Christ. God wants us to live for Him now.
And because of Jesus Christ, the gospel was preached, and you and I are blessed today because of Abraham. Did you know that? We're blessed.
Experience Truth, 99.3 FM.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
We've got questions. You've got the answer. Join the conversation. It's your voice we want to hear. So call 855-244-0077. Now, here's J. Michael McCoy.
All right, 10 before the top, Salem Radio Network News, and then, of course, True Blue, starring Pastor Michael Mudloff. Not starring, featuring Pastor Michael Mudloff and some of his great messages he delivers at Westkirk Presbyterian Church in Urbandale, Iowa. Tom Coates is in the house. My special guest, Rabbi David Kaufman. So what's next? What do you think is going to happen now? And I know it's just crystal ball stuff. So, but I'm just curious to think or to hear what you think comes next.
Well, Mac, I think the Israelis are going to try to maintain as much neutrality as possible because they certainly don't want to upset either Egypt or Saudi Arabia at this point. By advocating for the Muslim Brotherhood, even though their greater policy interest is probably in weakening Iran. I think the situation right now is that the United States basically has to hope that Russia can come up with an answer, and Russia has to hope that they can come up with an answer. I mean, I really do. I think both the United States and Russia are in real need of finding some way through this because the Russians can't afford to have Assad fall and then lose the port access they have in the Eastern Mediterranean because otherwise they don't have port access in the Eastern Mediterranean. And the United States really can't afford to have this diplomatic deal fall through either. So the person who's in the driver's seat in this whole thing is Assad. He's got Russia and the United States both needing him to be on board with this.
That's true.
I mean, think about that. And meanwhile, You're going to have a whole bunch of various rebel groups feeling abandoned by the United States. They can't even die in a gas attack and have the United States do anything to defend them. And when the United States does decide to do something, the United States decides to leave Assad in power indefinitely, which is functionally what the U.S. policy is, to leave Assad in power. Meanwhile, you've got to figure out what's going on with Iran, and if the United States can make some progress on Iran, if the Iranian government says, look, we really need economic development more than we need nuclear weapons, they may luck out there too. The Iranians may well try to prove that they're not a threat to get rid of the sanctions, because the sanctions are doing a lot of damage in Iran.
So how big a deal in the big scope of since the 64 war?
67 war? Which
67?
war are you talking about?
Okay. So
yeah.
The one where you guys took the Golan Heights back?
That's 67.
67. All right.
Well,
how big a deal is what's going on now compared to that event? Because that changed the Middle East forever.
Well, I mean, look, what's going on now is relatively minor in the grand scheme of things, unless you have borders changing and things like that. If Iran gets nuclear weapons, that changes the dynamic of the whole region.
But Iran is going to get nuclear weapons.
It depends, because like I said, if they get nuclear weapons and their economy collapses, and the mullahs lose power, that may be better. I mean, in a secular democracy with pro-American forces, which are the majority of the population in Iran, even with nuclear weapons, would be better than what we're dealing with now. So the real threat for the mullahs is that they lose power because of a revolution. And if the economy gets bad enough, they could well. Look, the United States has expected that revolution to happen in Iran for 2 decades now. Mm-hmm. It just hasn't. But Egypt, I think, was a good shock point, because Egypt proved that the military by itself could do that. And so if you get to the point where the military in Iran realizes that they're better off without the mullahs in power, they may well take the mullahs out of power. Then it doesn't matter whether there's other things, because at that point, the reason they would take them out of power is to become pro-Western. I mean, that would be the whole goal.
Iran?
Well, look, you got to remember, when the Shah of Iran was running the country, they were friends of Israel and friends of the United States. Yeah, and the average person in Iran is a friend of the United States. They're just not allowed to be.
One of the things we blame Jimmy Carter for, one of the many things.
So if the mullahs were to actually fall, Iran would become pro-Western. But the belief right now, I mean, like I said, the belief has been for 20 years that this is going to happen next year. It's like the Messiah's coming. The next year, this is going to happen.
But we know that Iran is going to get nuclear weapons. There's no doubt in anybody's mind, is there?
Well, like I said, they've been on that trajectory. They certainly can achieve it unless they change trajectories. The question is, will the economic damage happen fast enough and hard enough for them to decide they have to do something?
Why would economic damage happen?
Well, because we've put a lot of sanctions in place that are making life difficult there. Okay. And if we piss off enough people, they may decide that they want a new government. I mean, that's how those revolutions happen. So there are a lot of factors going on in these different countries. None of these are simple solutions. And meanwhile, the mullahs may decide that they need to accelerate their nuclear program in order to avoid having the U.S. act against them and worsen the economy still. They might be able to negotiate something if they get nuclear weapons that they can't negotiate now. It's a matter of what their pace is. We also don't know what's going on behind the scenes, to the point where we don't know if there's covert action that has done damage to their weapons that we don't know about. I mean, there could be any number of factors that would seriously impact this decision. But in the meantime, we're dealing with a resurgent Russia in the region. Russia's trying to reassert itself. You've got countries that don't believe that the United States, and rulers that don't believe the United States is going to stand by them against their internal enemies, who might feel that Russia is a better ally than the United States. So we're running in a situation where that could happen. You've got these nationalist versus Islamist splits in all of these countries. You've got the democratic forces trying to rise up in all these countries against both of those groups, the nationalist and the Islamist. And it's going to be constant tension for years to come.
So why did you vote for Obama? Rabbi Kaufman, I appreciate your time as always today. Your show again is Thursdays 2
to 3.
2 to 3, called Understanding the World, and it's just a piece of what you'll get today on that show. You can always go to webcast1live.com and look up his show and click on it and go to YouTube and watch any of those shows. And what's your website?
12talk2.com.
The numbers. Number 1.
Number 2. Talk2.com.
Wow, that's pretty. Where'd you come up with that?
While ago.
Very good. All right, and Tom, thank you for being here. We'll see you next Tuesday, unless you're off gallivanting somewhere in the world. Ryan, thanks for producing and handling all the difficult phone calls today. And until I see you again, do me just one favor, would you? For me, for your siblings, for your neighbors, and for your enemies. Just pray.